Welcome, pool guys and gals, to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast, where your host, Lauren Broom, will take a splash into many topics in the pool industry to educate all aquatic professionals. Listen in, and you just might be surprised what you'll learn. So let's jump right in.
Welcome, everybody, today to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. And on season 4, episode 64, I spoke with Bill Hamilton. He has been in the pool industry for over 40 years, and this was an awesome conversation. He's recently retired from running all the aquatics at Universal's Volcano Bay in Orlando, Florida for many years. And before that, he ran Aquatics at Wet 'n Wild, which was eventually acquired by Universal, which then they closed Wet 'n Wild when they opened Volcano Bay. And he's also worked for pool contractors, from builders to subs and the whole 9 yards. And this is an excellent conversation about pool equipment, water chemistry, the changes from the past to now. And it was just a fun conversation that we had together. And I hope that my listeners enjoy it as much as I did. And I want to say thank you to my strategic podcast sponsor for the past 4 years, Skimmer. Thank you very much for giving this medium of free education in an easy way to the pool pro so they can continue to learn about other topics in the pool industry and hearing what other people are doing in the industry as well. So want to take a few moments with my podcast sponsor, with Skimmer here, and then we'll get right in and jump right in with Bill Hamilton on this interview that I had with him, which was wonderful. You guys will enjoy this one.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer. Running a pool service business? Skimmer has your back. As the most trusted pool service software in North America, Skimmer helps you save time, boost revenue, and deliver top-notch customer service. With easy-to-use tools and unmatched live support, Skimmer is the partner you need for growth. Join the 30,000 plus pool pros upgrading their business. Visit getskimmer.com/Lauren Broom to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
Welcome, everybody, today to Let's Talk About Pools podcast. And on my podcast today, I have the great honor of interviewing Bill Hamilton. He's got 46 years in the pool industry, guys. So we're
counting.
Yeah, going on 47, right? Long time. You've seen a lot of things. And so we thought it would be cool to talk about the evolution of the pool industry and break this into 2 parts. So today's part, we're going to talk about how pool equipment and with his personal experiences and where he's been, how he's seen pool equipment evolve over the last 46, 47 years. So this is going to be an awesome episode, guys. I hope you catch this and listen all the way to the end. But let's let Bill introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him in case other people in the industry don't know who you are and what your background is. Tell everybody who you are, Bill.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for that, Lauren. My name is Bill Hamilton. Everybody calls me Billy because I started in 76 right out of high school. So yes, I was a Billy. So I guess I still am Billy. Everybody calls me Billy. And very seldom will someone call me Bill. But that's fine. But I started in 76 in the pool industry, a residential industry, and worked my way through residential, commercial, finally water parks. And I've spent 42 years in the water park industry. 42 years of illustrious love for the water park industry. I cannot begin to tell you how much I love the water park industry. To see things on that scale compared to my days back in the residential industry. But a lot of my success in the water park industry was because I was brought up in the residential industry. So, you see a small pool being built. I worked for the largest pool builder in the country at the time. Well, it was between this company that I worked for and another company out of California. And so we were large scale building residential pools. So I got to cut my teeth on building pools, and I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I just think swimming pools and the way they're designed is brilliant.
So what 2 water parks did you work for, Bill?
Well, I worked for Wet n Wild in Orlando, which was considered the first of its kind. And then from there, I moved on to Volcano Bay over at Universal Studios Resort Orlando. So, I've I've been a blessed man, but back to the residential industry, being able to build pools. And what I was saying is, I think the design and the build of a swimming pool is just brilliant. The way that it's designed, it's amazing. A lot of people just, they jump in and swim in this thing. They don't realize the brilliance behind how they're designed. But you look at a pump, just a simple pump alone, and what a pump does, and the way it sucks and discharges. It's just amazing how it's designed. And I love teaching pump courses myself because I love to help people understand how a pump really works and how to troubleshoot them. But just the pump alone and the way it draws and discharges, and then you got your filtration, but you can't just take water and send it through a filter. You've got to have chemistry, proper chemistry for this to work, all this to work. You have to have proper chemistry. You have to have the breakdown of material so that the filter brings it in without overloading. If you don't have proper chemistry, your filter is going to let you know about it. But the way a pool is designed, you look at the step down system. I call it a step down. You look at your skimmers and your main drains. So they have openings in them, right? They're just big enough for a certain size debris to go through and to keep a certain size out. So a certain size of debris can make it through those grates, through the course of the grate of the skimmer and the drain. Now you got another stop, and that's your hair and lint trap. That's your pump. We're talking about pumps. So now you have another stop. So that any material that is big enough to pass through your drain grates and your skimmers, right? More and more stop before the filter. And then like I said, this is a step down process. And then it stops at the hair and lint trap at a pump. Brilliant, huh? Anything small enough to make it through there, to make it through your impeller without clogging your impeller, makes it to the filter. Tell me that's just not brilliant. The step down system, now that's your suction, and then you got your discharge. So with the discharge, you got to have proper discharge. Wall returns, floor returns in commercial pools. Proper discharge is what's going to help you maintain cleanliness, help you with algae control. So this cycle, this suction, discharge, filtration, discharge, I just think this is brilliant. I just think it's brilliant. I just really do. And I loved it. I've always loved it. Ever since I was a teenage kid, I thought this was the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my life. And I was so thrilled to be a part of this process and watching it being built. And then you have other features that you can add. Like you've got your chlorine system for your feeders. You got heaters. You've got, well, the company I work for, we had features that really helped me a lot with plumbing through the rest of my career. We had something called living water, where at night you could have your pool light on. Back then, we didn't have lights that change colors. They had plastic lenses that you put on the light. I'm dating myself now. That was back in the day. So you snapped on a colored lens. Red made the water look like blood, but blue is really pretty. But we had what we called living water, where in the cement, in your gunite of the pool was this orifice. It was this little opening at the bottom of the pool. And in the tile line, this orifice would draw air through this tube that was coming out of the tile line. So you could hear it sucking the air, and what it would do is throw it up into the pool. And at night, it was beautiful. And we called it living water. And so you had these colored lenses on, and then you had these beautiful bubbles coming in. It just looked really cool. And then another feature we had our own cleaning system, our own pool cleaning system with valving techniques of suction and discharge. We had these, we called them clean sweeps. They would come down into the pool and they would sweep, and hopefully, because of the shape and contour and design of the pool, all the debris would end up going down into the main drain. But with the valving system, we could sit there and set our valves to where the sweeps would suck back into the wall. So we could just discharge them to clean the pool. But what's really cool about that, and no one else that I recall was doing anything like that, because this was just above and beyond just,
Does that, how far back does that go, Bill, with that system you're talking about?
back in 76.
Wow.
And I don't recall anybody doing anything like that other than us. But what was really cool is learning how to repair that stuff. I got so good with a jackhammer, I swear I could pick my teeth without chipping it. That's how good I get with a jackhammer.
So
But
let's take you back a little bit. So what was the pool equipment like when you started in 76 compared to where we were later in the 80s, 90s, and then, 2000s and where we are now? Let's talk about how the pool equipment has evolved from when you entered to where you are still involved in the industry now, 46 years later.
well, sand filters back in the residential industry back then in the 70s, mid sand was very popular. Sand filters, then diatomaceous earth, DE filters, they became pretty popular. But over the years, I started seeing the involvement of cartridge filters for the residential industry, like huge. Oh my gosh. I think you'll see more cartridge out there now in this day and age than you do anything else in someone's backyard.
I can agree with that.
But they work, they filter well, and they're easy to clean, easy to care for. You don't use a whole lot of water. You don't have to worry about the DE, the dust, although I know what I'm partial to because I'm a micron guy. I like what traps the best, right? That's just me. But they're easy, and that's what you see most of right now. But that was one of the, when it comes to filtration. Pumps, these days, back in that time, you never seen any variable frequency speed drives or two-speed pumps. You never seen that. Now it's a requirement. That is cool. So I love the way that that's come of age. And I love variable frequency speed drives. And when I do courses, people ask me, well, I'm not very familiar with that. What's that like? And I said, it's like you got a gas pedal on your pump. So I'm idling right now, right? Just with a few buttons, I'm going to give it some more fuel. Okay, we're picking up speed. So I love VFDs. So the way that that's come of age is just great. But, like I said, I cut my teeth on residential, and I'm thankful I did because, you learn a lot about repair and maintenance because it was, you're pressure testing these brand new pools. I remember going out and pressure testing them. Contractors would do their plumbing, and before we could take a step further, had to go out there and put a pressure test on them, pump it up, with water, 30 psi, cap off every line, pump it up to 30 psi, and you wanted to make sure it held steady. Your heart would skip a beat when you started seeing that needle coming down because you're like, oh man, I'm out here. I'm going to have to repair this. So now I'm going to have to find this plumbing break and or find out what is not glued properly. Hopefully you see it's something easy. I remember tunneling under decks as a young man. Thankfully I was smaller then because I didn't need as big of a hole. But I remember tunneling like a mole, right, to get to a place that I needed to repair the broken fitting. Now cutting it was one thing, but I remember dirt falling on my head, and then you shimmy back. But once you brought the glue and cleaner in, once you opened up that can, you just soon take yourself and microscopic and jump in that can of glue because it smelled like you were inside that can. So you do the job real quick and then you shimmy back out to get out of that hole as quick as you could. Give it time to dry and then run another test, run another pressure test. Okay, now you're ready for the next step. So some of the plumbing and all these other things that I was gifted started in the, when I say gifted, I was blessed with the career that I've had, the way it started, and then the way it's still going on. I've just been very blessed and thankful, very grateful for all those in my past that taught me how to do this. I remember just leak detecting, putting on scuba gear and going in, here I am, a young man, and I've got scuba gear on, and I'm going to find a leak and repair it in a pool. Tell me that's not cool,
That's
right?
cool. And that's
So,
come a long ways over the last 46 years, I'm sure.
well, I still do it the same way. I take a syringe, right? And you take a dye, like a food coloring. And you've got to do this very careful. You can't rush this. And you go to anything that penetrates a pool shell. We call them recessed, anything that penetrates. So your return fittings, your drains, your light fixtures, anything that penetrates a pool shell, you have to take and do a dye test around the fittings. You can't flood the area with dye, or you could overlook the leak, the suction.
Yeah, I'll just see if
So
it's
you barely squeeze that dye out of that syringe, and you'll see it. It looks like a little stream of, if you found the leak, this little stream of red or green, whatever color you use, and it looks like a hair, and it goes right in the hole. And then we have these wonderful items that's set up in all of our pool putties in the industry that sets up perfectly underwater. And always instruct people just do a nice, perfect job. Don't look like you mixed it up and look like you stuck bubble gum on it. Homeowners don't want to see that. And that's the thing that I love, that's helped me out a lot in my career, is when you have to deal with residential homeowners after they've just bought a brand new pool, all that money they spent, and now they've got issues. You learned how to be, I'm going to take care of it. I'm coming into your yard. You don't worry about a thing. You're not even going to know I was ever there. I remember replacing filters or pumps or whatever, doing repairs, and any plumbing that I did, everything was with a hacksaw back then. And so you leave shavings, right? I remember on my hands and knees picking shavings out of the mulch or out of the rock bed or the grass and just putting them in a little cup. I didn't want no homeowner seeing it. When I was there, everything was perfectly straight. You're using your level. The glue was clean. The joints were clean. I learned that that's how you had to conduct business. And I did that for the rest of my career. On large scale, I did that, even in the water park industry. And I taught, and I still teach to this day, still teach how to properly do these things. So I give a lot of my success to those early years in the residential industry.
So how have like chlorine feeders, acid feeders, we've got ORP controllers that will control the feeders. Let's talk about how that and the equipment has evolved over from the 70s to now.
Well, after back in the day when I was so busy in this residential industry. Now I was interested in commercial pools. I thought it was cool, if you had a repair or something at a commercial pool, wanted to do more of that. Wanted that because that's large scale. And also back then, you knew if you moved up from residential to commercial, you also moved up with your wallet, your income, right? So you become a commodity. You see people at distributorships, and they're like, "Hey, I see you here all the time. Hey, are you interested in maybe moving up to another position?" It's like people get to know you and know your name, and then you become wanted. It was the coolest thing as a young man to become popular and wanted, and you're like, let me think about that. Next thing you do, you end up moving on. And I think I've moved on perfectly in my career. So I started working on commercial pools and then moved on to the water park industry, which is serious commercial pool. So commercial pool, you look at residential and you look at the size of all the plumbing and the pump and filtration. Then you look at commercial pools. That's a step up, and you see the size difference and everything, right? Then when you move to water parks, Lauren, you would not believe what I seen when I first stepped into a pump room on a water park. Oh my goodness. And one of these days, I'm going to get you in a water park pump room and you're going to be amazed. And you're just not going to believe the size of everything. It's incredible. And I'm thinking, boy, that's going to be.
What was the size of your pool pump, like the biggest one at Volcano Bay?
Well, you got there's a lot of frequent, your slide pumps are your biggest pumps, like some of your slides or
How,
your
how
rivet
many
pump.
horse? How many horsepower were they?
Well, you're looking at 200, 250, you're
Yeah,
talking 300 horsepower.
major,
They're
major.
they're huge. I mean, the plumbing, you ought to see the plumbing. I mean, check valves, for example, one-way directional check valves, mechanical check valves. You would not believe the size of these in 10, 12, 14-inch plumbing and what it's like to replace them. It's like working on an automobile. So it's really fascinating to see this stuff. But it was so cool to move up from my commercial industry to the water park industry. That happened. I'll never forget the date, May 13th, 1980. I was hired on at Wet and Wild in Orlando, and I was hired on to do repair, water quality. They hired me on the title. I answered an ad that said water chemist, and so I go there and they said, you know what, we've called some of your past and you're highly recommended. We're going to hire you. And I said, well, that's cool. And it's funny, what sold me on that is growing up in this industry, I worked so many hours. You never knew because of repairs and demand, you never knew when you were going to have time off. A lot of, you'd think it'd be nice to have a weekend or at least, 2 days off a week, right? And that just wasn't happening. It's just out. Now I love the money. I always drove nice cars because I always knew that girls like nice cars, right? And I love nice cars too. So I always invested a lot of money into the automobile back then. And but I was having a hard time spending time, quality time with friends and significant others, right? So when I went to Wet and Wild, one of the things that sold me on it was it paid a little bit better. That's always good. But they said, and you'll get 2 days off a week. I said, what?
Woo-hoo!
Can I hear that again?
Yeah,
They said, you get 2 days off a week. And I said, wow. And he goes, right now, we're going to let you have Sunday and Wednesday off if you take the position.
you
I
can
said,
plan your life around that.
you got your man. Here I am. So the 2 days off a week was just spectacular, right? Of course, the benefits package was better, but when you're young, you don't really care that much about benefits. I know that sounds crazy, but back in that day, someone that never hardly ever seen a doctor or dentist is like, what? Oh,
Yep.
my benefits I'm interested in are the days off. the,
Well, you met
the
your wonderful wife at Wet and Wild as well.
right. That's exactly right.
So you
Back
found
in,
your significant other at the new place that you're working at. You get 2 days off a week.
yeah,
Sunday, Wednesday, you got benefit. You got like the best of all worlds there.
yeah, that's right.
So
And
now you got the 2 days to spend with her if she had the same 2 days off, hopefully. We don't know.
well, I tell you what, I was smitten. I spent a lot of time with that person when I was dating and marriage, and I was definitely hooked.
Did the car thing help?
Yes.
Cool car help?
Oh, yes, at that time I had a Toyota Supra, which was a sporty car back then, right? With a sunroof. So you should have seen us at the beach with the sunroof open. It's just, yeah, now that's living the life, right?
Yep.
So
So
this
like when you started in the industry to where we are, how did chlorine feed change? Chlorine and chemical feed, how did that change over your career?
Well, that's an excellent question. I love talking about that because commercial pools, a lot of them here in the state of Florida had gas chlorine. A lot of them did. So I cut my teeth on some of these commercial pools but Wet and Wild was all gas chlorine.
Wow.
So we had gas chlorine. So everything was on a scale because you have to know where you're at on your level because you're running a water park. You can't be like, that tank's out, because once that tank's out, 20 minutes later in the sun and the heat in Florida, that chlorine level's gone, right?
Yep.
So with gas chlorine, we had 150s and 2-ton tank cylinders,
Wow.
and they were delivered to us every Wednesday. That was when the chemical truck came and delivered them, and they go onto in a storage area, and one that's in use is on a scale. And then if you're fortunate enough that you got another one on a scale, like the 150s was a scale where you had a backup on a scale and one that's in use on a scale. So you could see the weight of it. And as you're using your product, you'd see the weight come down, and then you would go ahead and change out to the other one. And then it was a switch out system. We had a great system. So with gas chlorine, I talked to you about this before, is when it's introduced into your plumbing at discharge, heading towards your pool, gas chlorine turns into hydrochloric acid. A lot of the podcast listeners out there probably don't realize that that's what muriatic acid is. Muriatic acid is hydrochloric acid. Muriatic acid was a term used. It was brought about years ago for the homeowner to feel like, hydrochloric acid, everybody knows that that's some bad stuff, right? Depending on the percentage.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, I got a gallon jug of hydrochloric acid in my house. Forget that. I'm not getting a pool. So muriatic acid, isn't that a sweet name, muriatic?
Yes, it is. I've always loved that name.
It's real cute, isn't it?
I'm going to name my kids muriatic acid.
Make it a nickname.
Make it a nickname.
But hydrochloric acid is what's happening. So when the gas chlorine is introduced into the plumbing stream, it's creating hydrochloric acid. Now, all those CPO instructors out there realize that the power of hydrogen, or the hydrogen's potential, is what we're trying to do. We're trying to create hypochlorous acid, right?
Yep.
That's our hot fire for disinfecting and oxidizing, right? pH dependent, right? Well, think about that. If your chlorine that's being introduced is 100% pure elemental and it's turning into acid at discharge, think of the bomb, the hypochlorous acid bomb that you just created in that plumbing. I used to call it idiot proof because, you just like slap this gas on and the water's brilliant, right? But because you're turning it into acid, that's where your 180's acceptable range of total alkalinity comes from. Because you had to create a higher buffer of your total alkalinity. Makes sense, doesn't it? You had to create a higher, because you're just destroying your total alkalinity over a 24-hour period like you would not believe. We had a storage room with mountains of sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate, mountains of it. You should have seen the technicians going out in the morning with their forklifts and hand carts and trucks, little hand trucks, just tons of sodium bicarbonate to be dumped in every pool. And because we got this going on, well, we had to use a pH up, right? So we used soda ash to start with. Soda ash, well, it had to be a mixing vat. And it was hard to keep that perfect concentration. So then I went ahead and started using sodium hydroxide, which the term caustic soda. Caustic soda is what we use. So because it's in 15-gallon drums or 55s, depending on what you use. I like the 15s because they're easier to move around. I'm all about safety. I don't like bending people's backs. Now you use a lot of 15-gallon drums, but so you're pumping in gas chlorine, creating all that acid. Now you're destroying your total alkalinity. So you got mountains of that you're adding to the pools every morning, and then you're pumping all that caustic soda. So that's how we did things. Then all of a sudden, someone approached me with, "Yeah, I want you to see this." I said, "What is this?" He goes, "This is a chemical automation controller." I said, "I don't need controller. I do that. I'm the controller." So back in the day, you did everything with your fingertips. You judged your weather, you judged your bather load, the time of the year, and you'd go and you'd test your water. You'd be like, okay, here's where I'm at. So I use my fingertips to adjust everything, real fine tune everything, right? That's how we did everything, was by fingertips, by judging our test kits and then doing everything with your hands. You even had a nighttime setting. Park is closed, right? Now at night, you turn down the gas chlorine all the way down to where you're just on your rotometer, where you're barely feeding, just enough to where at night you're giving it you're killing and destroying any combined, right? And you're not going to be left with anything over 10, 15 parts per million. So that took trial and error. Same thing. Every day we did this. Back in the day when I ran this facility, I didn't want anybody else touching this water. Now, on my Wednesdays and Sundays when I was off, I trusted one person who was one of the maintenance technicians, and he did a real good job, and because I'd know when I came in the next day where my settings were and everything. But yeah, if your technician, whoever closes that afternoon, if he did not set that rotometer down where it was supposed to be with that gas chlorine, remember, it turns into acid, right? So if you're feeding 30, 40 parts per million of gas chlorine because someone left it on the wrong setting, it was still on a daytime setting, I seen the colors of metals because of this. I got to understand the colors of metals. Anything that was in metal in that pool, I got to see the color of it. I walked in one morning to a pool, right? Or walked in, and one of the technicians came up to me and he goes, you might not want to go. He goes, you might not want to see the Raging Rapids. I said, why is that? He says, because the water looks like grape juice. I said, what? He says, it's purple. I said, you got what? So I walk over there. Sure enough, it looked like Welch's. And so I knew right away what had happened. We had a pool full of serious acidic water because that chlorine, that gas chlorine was left all night. So that low level acidic, 0 on the pH scale, right? Yep. Over that period of time at night, took that very good 316 stainless steel main drain grates, right? And emitted this purple color. So I took care of that. We got I got that ride open in time. Then I seen another pool where someone did that. Not as much stainless in this pool though. And it turned into like a hazy gray. It didn't quite turn purple. I've seen colors with brass, copper. I've seen every color that metal will emit because of these mistakes. So, there you are learning, right? So I got to see this stuff of what metals do in these unbelievable amounts of low pH for a certain time limit.
So how did the chemical equipment change from, you're doing everything by hand when you first started in the water park industry, to then what came along afterwards? What came along after you were doing a lot of it by hand, you had gas chlorine, what came out next after that?
Well, back to the chemical automation controllers. First, they started coming of age. I wouldn't say of age yet, just in the trial testing period. So I tried. I wasn't happy with it. They were analog, needles, just needles on a dial. And they would just keep drifting all the time. It was like I would test and I'd have to calibrate, and I just didn't like it. And then finally, someone approached me and said, I've got a system that I guarantee you'll like. And, this system that this guy turned on to me, I definitely liked it. I liked it a lot. It worked, even though it was an analog system. I'll never forget the day that I put it on a attraction on a pool, and it did the job. I called it my watchdog. It did the job.
What company ORP system was that at that time?
Well, at that time, it was a Stranco system. Strantrol, yeah. But yeah, and it was the 720 model, and maybe the person that sold it to me, he's still in the industry. He'll be watching this podcast, and he'll say, "Man, I sold it to him." So that sold me on that there's a future for this. And now you see where chemical automation is gone to right now.
The whole 9 yards. I know.
Well, at my last facility, I had a system that, I started doing this years ago, where I wanted to see everything on a monitor in my office. So I wanted to see every body of water on a monitor. I wanted to take this to another level. So started working with powers to be to get that done. And then now you can actually have a system that can not only monitor and send you a reading back, but now we actually have not just ORP and pH control probes, but we have PPM probes
Yep.
and total PPM probes. So now we have controllers. Now UV has came out. You're going to love this. So you got UV systems. UV helps get rid of combined chlorine, right?
Yep.
But now with these controllers, it will sit there because they're little computers, and it will take your free and your total, do the subtraction from the total, the free and the total on the probes, and actually get this, give and ramp up your UV system. Tell me that's not cool. So we went from those little needles, analog, that said, hey, I don't like this, to where we're at now. And I'm in love with what we're at now.
I've seen some of them where they're capable, where people can pull it up on their cell phone and they can actually make changes to their ORP or pH levels on the controller from their cell phone, and not even
Right.
property, because everything's gone to Wi-Fi, and so it sends everything through that. So the technology has really come a long way for chemical feed. We've talked about pumps. We've talked about filters. UV is awesome. I know state of Florida public facilities for splash pads about 8 years ago required the use of UV as secondary disinfection as a requirement. So UV is awesome secondary disinfectant, great at getting rid of combined chlorine, very efficient. So it's so many things are awesome. What
Right.
about testing the water? Has testing the water changed? With testing?
What you're talking about with the UV right now, I always explain to people what UV is your underwater bug light. You know how you got your bug light on the patio and
Yep.
you can hear it zapping every mosquito and every bug that lands on it? Well,
Yep.
that's what UV is. It's underwater. You just don't hear it.
Right.
But
it's just it's not test, and most health agencies look at it. It's great for secondary disinfection, but not ever going to be used for primary, because there's no way to actually test the level on it like you can with a test kit for chlorine and that kind of thing. So
well, that's the same thing with ozone. You know, ozone's great. It's fantastic. It's just all over the place when you test it.
yep.
So, you know, that's why, you know, back to our classes that we teach about residual. And
Yep.
everybody out there, remember residual. What's the word? Residual.
Which
That's
is a
why.
concentration, and that's what your parts per million is when you're testing on your pool test kit. You're testing that residual that's long lasting in the water. So UV and ozone basically disinfect at the unit or just after the unit, but it's not long lasting in the water, whereas chlorine is, and goes to the pool and continues through and then back to the equipment again.
Right. Well, you know, back to the UV, that's another one of those things that's evolved. I remember when no one even thought of using UV on a system.
Yep. The technology's come a long way, and the
Thank
knowledge
God.
industry has come a long way. It's really neat. And I know our next part, we're going to talk about a different podcast episode under this evolution of the pool industry. We're actually going to hit pool water chemistry and how the knowledge that we have and how we're testing and everything. We're going to talk about that in a two-parter. So this was pool equipment. Next one, we'll talk about pool water chemistry, how we test the water and that kind of thing, and how that's evolved over time. So is there anything else you want to add for the listeners about the evolution of the pool equipment over the years?
Well, everybody that's out there working on what you're working on, always remember where you came from and where you're going to go, because this is a science-based industry and things are going to keep evolving. So please, in this profession, keep evolving with your equipment. That's one thing I got to add. And
keep taking
I'm
education. You got to keep learning, because there's always something new to learn, right, Phil?
That's exactly right. Stay ahead of the learning curve. And you got me so excited now when you said water chemistry. Doggone it. I got to wait for that.
Yeah, we're gonna wait. We'll record that, and it'll be an exciting second parter to having Bill Hamilton on the podcast. And I just want to say thank you for your experience. Can you tell everybody where they can find you? Because I know you're retired. You retired from the water park industry, but you're still heavily involved in the pool industry, and you're doing a lot of education now. And you are a CPO, PHTA CPO instructor. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
Well, sure, I'd be glad to. So anyway, I'm a consultant. I'm never ever going to stop doing what I do. I always tell people I love this industry so much that I'll be doing this until my last breath. And that's the honest to God truth. Hopefully that's not for a long time, but I just love what I do. And you can find me at allaquatics@aol.com.
Awesome.
So,
And he
so
teaches CPO classes, guys. He teaches his own. So check him out for CPO classes. Look at his schedule, please. He has so much to give you from his experience when he's teaching these classes. So please check him out and go to his website, allaquatics.com.
well, yeah, allaquaticsfl.com, or you can find Bill Hamilton and Associates. That's easy to remember. Bill Hamilton Associates.
There we go. So he's got his classes will be posted on his schedule there. He teaches CPO. But if you need consulting for your water park anywhere in the country, please give him a call. He's got probably the most experience out there. He was in the World Water Park Hall of Fame and was inducted, a few years ago?
In October of 22, yes.
There we go, a couple of years ago. So please reach out to him. And all his contact info is on his website. But I want to say thank you again. It's an honor to have you on the podcast, Bill. You are a legend in the industry, and I'm so humbled to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
I am too.
Thanks for diving in today with the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. Be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. And feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts so more aquatic professionals like you can learn about the show. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast.